This is case study number 8. It's about boys versus girls in the classroom. So as you can see here, this is our cast. I did have a mistake here. The female teacher on the left is supposed to be Miss Matthews and not Miss Williams, so that's my bad. And let's just get started on this case study. Miss Matthews is a new teacher. She just graduated from college. Today she is looking to observe classroom to see their behavior and how they engage in class. So during class, she'll be taking notes. And Mr. Williams, he is a 15-year veteran at this school. He's very well liked by the principal and his colleagues. He's hoping to teach Miss Matthews how to engage students in the classroom appropriately and have them behave while they do this engagement. Just a little bit about the students. The girl, she's a very good student, almost straight A 4.0 student. So obviously she makes good grades, very well liked at school, doesn't really get bullied, picked on, or anything like that. The boy, also a very good student, almost a straight A student. At times he is very confident, so there might be a little cockiness about him. And also he is very competitive, so he plays a lot of sports in school, and when it comes to the classroom competitions, he gets really competitive. The students walked to their desk, sat down, and took their notebooks out. Mr. Williams got in front of the class and always introduced like always and said, "Good afternoon, boys and girls. Are we ready to learn?" The students respond with, "We are ready." Mrs. Matthews took note of this to understand that there is an engagement between the student and teacher as soon as class starts. Mr. Williams starts off with the class that reminding them that they have an exam the next day. One of the students asked if they could review as a class for the exam tomorrow. Mr. Williams says, "That's a great idea. Let's play a game and you guys determine who's on teams." The students then turn to each other to decide on who is going to be on whose team. Mr. Williams goes back to Miss Matthews and tells her that if you let students make decisions, they'll take ownership of their own learning. Of course, Miss Matthews takes notes of this, and then she looks up and sees the excitement and engagement that the students have in this classroom. Mr. Williams gave the students enough time to make up their decision. One of the male students raised his hand, and he suggested boys versus girls. And a lot of people in the classroom agreed with the teams, so Mr. Williams said, "Why not? We're going to do boys versus girls." So Mr. Williams tells the boys to go on one side of the room and the girls on the other side. Mr. Williams pulls up the questions on the projector. As the game went on at the beginning, both sides were doing very well. Mrs. Matthews really loved the engagement between the teacher and the students and how they were reviewing for this test. After 20 minutes passed by, the girls started to get more points. They started pulling away from the guys, and the guys started to get angry about this situation. The boys started to joke around with the girls, and they were trying to say, "We're letting the girls win so they won't cry." The girls reminded the boys that they had won previous games in his class and in other classes that they had with these guys. They bickered back and forth, and then it became from just talking to yelling back and forth in the classroom. Mr. Williams saw that the situation was getting out of hand, and he states, "Alright guys, listen up. If you don't stop fighting, I'm going to prepare a new seating chart, and it will alternate boys and girls, which clearly would make you all unhappy. Let's focus." After his statement, the class settles down, they both focus onto the game, and they finish their review. Please keep in mind that Miss Matthews was still continuing her notes during and after the distraction. The game was finally finished. The students started to pack up and leave the classroom. Miss Matthews overheard students argue about which gender is more intelligent and which ones are better at different things in life. As the students walked away and went to their next class, Mr. Williams walks back to Miss Matthews and says, "That's how it's done. The students love competitions and don't even realize how much they're learning in the process. Any behavior issues are resolved quickly when I threaten to give them assigned seats. They hate that. Mr. Williams took a glance down at Miss Matthews' notes and saw the two words, gender stereotype. He said, "Whoa, that's what you're focusing on?" Miss Williams tried to explain what she saw during the situation of the two genders arguing back and forth and what she heard after class. Mr. Williams went back to his desk, very, very aggravated at Miss Matthews. He looked at her and said, "Boys versus girls, that's what the students love to do. It's a fun way to help them learn. You're still new at this whole teaching thing, and you'll learn soon enough that as long as the students are engaged in learning, that other stuff won't matter." After this situation, our group thought about these questions. What are some of the dynamics Miss Matthews observed that might have raised concerns about gender stereotypes for her?
Ms. Matthews observed a few different incidents that would review gender stereotypes in Mr. Williams' classroom. The first part was when they split into two teams that were boys and girls, but also led into the boys and girls mocking one another and making rude jokes. Mr. Williams then said any behavior issues are resolved quickly when I threaten to give them assigned seats that would alternate boys and girls. And he also acknowledged that students are more engaged in learning and the other stuff that does not matter when splitting them into boys and girls and putting them against one another.
Is Miss Matthews' assessment of gender stereotypes justified? Why or why not?
Mrs. Matthews' assessment of the gender stereotypes is justified because by separating the boys and girls, Mr. Williams is already causing a division of genders, which is highlighted by how they treat each other. The students have begun to distinguish the differences between themselves. The boys assume that the girls are over-emotional and let them win, and the girls feel as though they have to prove themselves even though they clearly were the better team. Mr. Williams does nothing to stop it except for threaten to seat them boy, girl, which he assumes would be bad for them.
What implications about gender might arise for the students in this class? How might students who are transgender or who do not identify with any particular gender group feel as they watch their peers endorse the boys versus girls activity?
Different implications that might arise out of being in this class are one, that there's a competition between boys versus girls. Instead of promoting unity, you're promoting division between genders. The idea between a transgender, it's the responsibility of the teacher, and to allow them to take ownership of their learning is definitely a great opportunity for them to do that. But by doing so, they also make others feel left out. So with the transgender, I believe that it'd be better useful if the teacher were the one who took ownership of their learning and put it into and made the classroom environment a better environment and more fun environment, instead of just leaning mostly on the students to do what they want to do.
What are some other options for splitting students into two teams? Teachers should have the students decided on teams sometimes, but not all the time. In other ways of making teams, you can mix the boys and girls up, and then you can also mix the stronger students with the weaker students to make teams even, and this could also help out the weaker students to understand the material better for the test.